Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mariner of Spirit via the Supernatural League Network. And I'm Greg, and I'm the host. And one of the things I wanted to bring up before I bring my guest on tonight, or a few things that I want to bring up, is the people that I support. And I support PKC, Paranormal Kicks Cancer, with Chris Gaskowski and Alex Wilkinson, and they're from down in Florida. And they do haunted houses, and they'll do haunted events at haunted locations, and all the money that they raise goes to cancer research. And the other one is the Jessica Petrie Foundation with Howard Petrie. And I don't know if they're up and running yet. Howard's had some issues, and we sort of pulled it down from our show for a while to give him time to recoup. And I haven't heard from him yet, but I thought I'd mention it because the other one would be, of course, Potographs. And Potographs is run by Tim Miley and his wife Lauren, and they do paranormal events pretty much around this area and up north into Michigan and down all the way over Ohio, that area, all the way across over there. They do some tremendous work with the guests that they have. Every event that they have, they'll have the top-notch speakers. They run them probably, I think the last time I was at one, there were like 7 different speakers. The venue was fantastic. It's always at a premier haunted location. The one that I had been into was at Ashmore Estates in Central Illinois, and I would love to have been to the one that they had this last time. They just had one up in Houghton Lakes, up in Michigan, and that would have been just awesome. Well, the only other thing I have to mention are the authors that I support, and these are people that have all been on the show. And I'm just going to start out at the beginning of the list and go all the way through it. I have Bruce Holliday, Tobias Wayland, Adam Benedict, Kathy Kressel, Barnaby Jones, Sherilyn Cotter, Dr. Heatherly Langdon, Lynn Monet, Ron Iacovetti, Victoria Munday, Tony Rathman, Natalie Jones, Patty Negri, Sylvia Schultz, Amelia Cotter, Rex Nielsen, David Sloan, Christina Bloom, D.A.Y. Song, Joseph Hellant, and Dr. Rebecca Foster. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste any time because this is a very important guest I have here today. I'm going to bring her on. This is D.A.Y. Song. She's a fantastic She's a fantastic, I can't even talk right now. Fantastic author who has quite a lot of books to her credit. She just completed a 25-book series that she's done. She's done some fantastic work. One of her real big categories that she loves to cover is one of the ones that we might see running around in our backyards every once in a while, and those are cryptids. So without further ado, I'm going to say, DA, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here once again. And if you want to have something that you want to start by saying, hey, Greg, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Greg. It's good to be back.
Anytime.
And you never know. I don't think it's too dumb. I think sometimes things are running around in the backyard.
No, I literally, we're not that far from the Beast of Bray Road. That's like not even an hour from here. So, I mean, there was one night that we were going to go ahead and we were going to go there and we were going to actually put a tent up.
Oh, wow.
He had permission from the farmer that owned the property. And in the midst of going ahead and getting something together, we found out that there was somebody that was taking full deer carcasses and planted them.
Oh, wow.
To see if anything would respond. They didn't find one. They were all gone.
Oh my gosh.
So there's something very, very big that doesn't think twice about going ahead and grabbing it in the whole. It's like grabbing a whole supermarket,
And from what I understand, that particular area isn't supposed to have very big wildlife.
Right. Yeah. And that's I can't remember the lady that died about 3 years ago. She was in the cryptids quite a lot, and I can't remember her name, but she's a redhead, I want to say. That's about all I remember of her. Not that that's any essential information, for sure.
Linda Godfrey.
Yes, Linda.
Yeah.
And she used to always be at the Chicago Paracons. So
I heard she was a really good lady. I didn't get to meet her.
Yes, she was, and she knew the boys. So she used to hang around. Like, for instance, you had who did you have here that I had mentioned? The one of the authors. Besides yourself, it was another. Barnaby Jones. Barnaby Jones does a lot of that too, a lot of cryptic research and goes out on investigations and things like that. What led you to choose this as your new career? And not that it's new, you've obviously been working at it for quite some time.
Yeah. I guess I was an enthusiast all my life with the unknown and the paranormal, and pretty much had experiences most of my life, ever since I was a young child, in something one way or the other. And I guess when I actually sat down at the computer and started writing, I just, the cryptid just seemed to really fascinate me. So because I have never had an encounter per se with one, I just decided to start writing about them and researching and learning more about it. I've had a lot of paranormal encounters, like experiences in my own home, most of my life. So I feel like it's kind of almost all intertwined. I've never had a UFO experience, but I don't have to have the experience to believe that that's a real thing too. And it's the same thing that goes for the cryptids, And of course, Bigfoot was the one that really caught my attention. And after that, it was Dogman. But there's just so many of them out there. I just find it all fascinating. So I decided I was going to write about them and make it come to life.
Oh, you've done a real excellent job on that, and I think that you have a huge, must be huge audience as far as books and everything. I know that from what you're selling, and they're available on how many different markets, your books.
I mean, I mean, my last book hit is right now. I just released Hunting for Tulpas last Monday, and it's still number one in three different categories. Exploration and discovery is a really big one, which I think is fascinating because that's what I'm all about, is exploring and just discovering new things. Every time I write about a cryptid or something, I'm always learning something new. And it's funny how it just goes into the next one and into the next one. And this particular book actually hit the Buddhist exploration and discovery, and also occult suspense. So it's doing really, really well, and it's the completion of that series. So it was kind of bittersweet to get that last one out there, because it's like, now what am I going to do? What am I going to write about now? Because that basically took the last 3 years of my life. I've been writing about those steadfast.
Take a small vacation.
I don't think I'm already on the next project. Actually got two projects going on already.
Oh, that's awesome, honey.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to worry about a vacation.
Well, it won't. I'm going to get a vacation in there too. But these books were really coming out. The next two projects, they'll both be complete by the end of this year, but it won't be like a book every month.
So why don't you explain to everybody what a tulpa is?
A tulpa. Well, it's interesting because when I wrote the first book, Rise of the Cryptids, it begins in for the Monster Hunters of America series. It begins in Nazi Germany with Hitler. And he was very fascinated with the occult, that most people do know that. But as I was on the completion of the series, and the subject was tulpas, I found myself going into a full circle and going back into Tibet. Actually, Hitler had an expedition where they went to Tibet because he also was fascinated with the occult as well as tulpas. So I found that pretty interesting. I didn't plan it that way. But a tulpa is basically, it's a thought monster. It's a, not just in my books, they're monsters, but it's just a thought form that comes to life and to a physical reality. So it's kind of like it's actually called the proper the proper phrase is a Tolkien, because you can get on TikTok or get on any kind of platform today, and they will guide you and show you how to create your own tulpa. But really, the proper pronunciation and description for a tulpa is when it's connected to a religious practice, like with the Tibetan monks. A Tolkien is when it's more secular, but it's both the same thing. It's just manifesting it for different reasons. The Buddhists actually use that practice to take themselves to nirvana and to realize that we are the creators. So we create with our thoughts, and then therefore, if we are disciplined enough, then we can have that manifest into the physical reality. A lot like if we want a car, not that that's a tulpa, but that same principle. You want a car, so you're going to think about a car. You're going to drive that car. You're going to see what color it is. It's kind of like that practice, a soft, disclosure on that. Um, and I think that what's really fascinating about it is when I started researching, I don't know if you're familiar with um, Grant Morrison, with the Invisibles and Dr. Mob. Do you remember him? He was a comic books. He was a Scottish writer. Are you familiar?
A little bit.
With the Invincibles is what it was. So He actually wrote, I think, 300 novellas, so very short, but it was basically King Mob was the main character. And this was back in the 80s, I guess, 70, late 70s, early 80s. And he wrote this character, this protagonist, that he became so in line with that protagonist. Like I was telling you before the show, parts of me come out in different characters. I think most writers do that. But in Grant Morrison's case, he literally would dress like King Mob. He shaved his head like King Mob. He literally was really becoming so entwined with his character. He would go to comic book conventions and, act like King Mob. And one day he was sitting there drinking coffee, working on his book, and guess who was sitting across from him? King Mob literally manifested into a physical reality. So that's how that works. Now, back in the 1920s, there was another woman that was a French explorer, and she actually went to Tibet, Alexandra David Neal, and she actually studied under the Tibetan monks in the monastery right there in the Himalayan mountains. And it took her 6 months, and she kind of like went into a cave, more or less to speak, because it's very, very disciplined. And she was just sitting there in her room, and lo and behold, she had created a kind of a friar tuck kind of Buddhist monk that was like real cheerful. It took her 6 months, and he manifested. And not only did she see it, all the monks in the monastery saw it. It would come to the table and eat with them. It was like really physically in a reality. But one of the things about tulpas is once you have that thought, it's almost like having a child. So let's imagine giving yourself, you're birthing a child. Once that child becomes in the physical, you can rear it, you can raise it, you can teach it different things, but they're anonymous, autonomy, their own autonomy, and they're their own sovereign being. A child is, to a degree, and so is the tulpa. So when the tulpa manifests, it can do whatever it wants. So this, in this particular case, it started getting really thin. It started to have a malacine grin. It wasn't so jolly anymore, and actually, she felt like he wanted to kill her. So then she went back into isolation, and they showed her how to reverse it. She actually wrote a book. This was like in 1923. She wrote several books, but this one was Magic and Mysteries of the Tibet. So it's a really interesting book. I read it. It's a very, very interesting book. And she literally reversed the tulpa back into the void. So it basically starts in the void, and if you want to reverse it, it goes back to the void.
How would you, so for instance, I'll say it this way. There was a convention that I was at in Chicago, and I didn't do it, but I had friends that were involved in this same type of deal where they all had the same thought process, and they all brought upon themselves and created basically, as you said, a tulpa. And it was okay for so long during the convention, and then things started to fall over, and things were getting a little chaotic. So it got to the point where they were going, well, what are we going to do now? And I was just wondering, because of the things that we all do in the paranormal, especially on the ITC end of it, uh, how would you go about calling it back? It would have to be a group conscious, right?
Well, not necessarily. What's interesting is what you just shared. There was actually a group, and I don't have my specifics right now, but there was actually, it was in, I think it was in Canada actually, and a group of of paranormal investigators and stuff. I can't think of when this might have been in the 60s. I think there was like 6 or 7 of them, and they brainstormed this character. They gave it a backdrop, you know, like storyline, how it, I think the character was from the 1600s, and he was married, and it was like it was like a loveless marriage, and he ended up falling in love with this other woman, and they actually labeled her as a witch, and she was burnt at the stake, and then he ended up killing himself. But it was a completely fabricated character. But when it came to being, the character started it became a reality. You know what I mean? So then, in the halls of where that was, different people would come in, and that character would be lingering in that space, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Which takes me to the next thing. And I talked about this a couple years ago when I did my book for Ghosts of Northern Kentucky, because I'm very big on research. And when Bobby Mackey's is literally 2 miles down the road from me, which is very, very haunted. It's leveled now, but the area is still there.
If I would have known that, I would have knocked on your door.
Where you head down this way?
I've always been around there.
Oh, yeah, I'm literally less than 2 miles. But anyway, there's a couple, I would call them, now this is where it gets a little more complicated. So a tulpa is when a person manifests something into a reality. Then there's a next level of egregores. And egregores can be such a wide range, but we're going to talk about Bobby Mackey's right now, and you'll understand a little bit more why it's more of a group effort. So let's just say the song, I can't remember. Do you remember the song that he made about the ghost that was there? Not Joanne. Was it Johanna? I think it was Johanna. The song that Bobby Mackey made up. It was the ghost that pushed his wife down the steps when she was pregnant. Do you remember that?
I remember mentioning a song, but I don't remember the.
Okay, well that was the ghost that she was like 6 months pregnant, his first wife, and pushed her down the steps. And so a lot of people have seen Johanna, and the story was that her father, she was pregnant. She had fallen in love with a singer. It was a nightclub, like a speakeasy, and the father found out, and it was kind of like below them. He didn't approve of the marriage or the pregnancy, so he shot her lover and killed him. So she in turn went and poisoned her father, and then she killed herself. So it was like a double murder suicide. Well, when I started researching it, that never happened. But the spirits are there, but they're egregores, which is a story, just like what your people did, just like the people did in Canada. They told the story so many times that people believe it. So then it manifests into our physical reality. And so thousands of people have seen Johanna. Thousands of people have seen thousands and thousands of people.
Did you see that? You see that in the chat? That's Dean. Dean Thompson just went ahead and put Joanne on 1989 in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and then he mentioned the Philip experiment, 1972.
That's what it was, the Philip experiment. That's exactly what it was. So that particular thing is not really a tulpa, but it's an egregore. It's the same concept. But see, so many people believed that story that it has manifested into the reality. You've had paranormal investigators go in there left and right and see all those spirits that I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the headless ghost, which is Pearl Byron. And nobody really knows what happened to her head, but the story goes that the two guys, the one, she was pregnant, the one was I think he was going to be a dentist, and they were in dental school in Cincinnati. And so they brought her over to Fort Thomas. They decapitated her, and supposedly the story was they took the head down to Bobby Mackey's when it was a slaughterhouse. This was like in the late 1800s, I think 1894. But the only problem is when I researched that particular story, there was only a toll road that goes down East Alexandria Pike. It's the only way you could have got to Bobby Mackey's from where they were coming from. And there was no documentation of anybody even being on that road for days that would match up to that. But then again, we've had thousands and thousands of people see a headless ghost. That's another egregore. That is not nothing documented that is even that her head was even there in that building. And supposedly they did some kind of satanic ritual, and then they dropped her head into the well that goes down to the Licking River, which is right in the back.
Said Pearl Bryan.
Yeah, Pearl Bryan. They were actually the last two men that were hung in northern Kentucky in Newport for that murder, for that particular murder. But there's no proof that her head ever made it to Bobby Mackey's. They never did find the head.
There was a gentleman that I can't think of his name right now. I'm having a brain fart for sure. But anyway, what was going on was he was the one that we had on, and I had him on numerous times. He was a close friend, became a close friend. He died like a year and a half ago, and he was a doctor, and God, it's killing me. Anyway, the story is that he was on the show one night, and we were all together having this sort of round table discussion, and he brought up the term egregore. And then he went ahead and he told the story that I just did. And he has passed early. And one of the things that's always got to me is the fact that I still think he's around. And I mean, for me not to remember his name is almost blasphemous, because he got that close to us, that he was just this awesome individual. And I think, no, it wasn't the one that came on, and I'm saying this to the people in the chat, the one that used to be on when with me and Chris Carr and Kristen, and we would have who's the doctor. I hope you guys remember, because I can't. But anyway, they brought up Dr. Chuck Kennedy too. Dr. Chuck Kennedy was the one that headed its project site. Michael Lynch. Have you ever heard of Michael Lynch? He is a man that was just a wealth. It would just flow. And they were, I mean, the details, the different types of energies and fields and people and everything all the way down the line. He was mesmerizing, to say the least. He could keep a bunch of people in a room talking, and it would go 10, 12 hours. I bet. And I'm just saying that because I've been on with him for 3.5. And it was like he just got there.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was like one of those, and it would affect you. It would be like you've been touched. Another one was Dr. Chuck Kennedy, and Dr. Chuck Kennedy was the gentleman who founded Project Psi. And this was Project Psi. And that you see it's psychic investigation, and you see the Egyptian symbol,
Yeah.
okay, the eye. And he was a great guy that formed his own group. And I happened to be the last one that he scanned. He brain scanned.
Wow.
And when we got all done, he wanted me to join. And I said, I don't feel, I have so much in everything else. I'm a master of none compared to a lot of these other people. And he combined not only the psychics, but also he brought in remote viewers. And he was one of the gentlemen, he was responsible for like 3 years ago down in Texas when they found that giant trailer filled with human trafficking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I recall that.
Christmas, right before Christmas, there were like 500 people they found.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was his group. And I don't talk about this too much, but since we were all on the same plane, it was interesting because I know that you are right there yourself, without a doubt. And I could feel it. Every time, when I talk to you, and like the discussion we had before the show, it was like I started giggling because it was like I knew, and I'm sure that you knew too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like we've been. Where were you in 1842?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, because that's the way it feels. And he was one of these people. He did all my past lives. He did a whole bunch of work with me besides my work that I did on my mediumship and going into the psychic end. I don't consider myself to be a psychic. I never have. I every once in a while things will happen, but it's something that's been given to me. It's not something that I actually had in me all the time, like a lot of people do. And when I talked to you, you said it happened to you as a child. Now I remember being at Gettysburg when I was 10.
Oh, wow.
And I was 10 years old, and I remember everything that happened that day. And that was the total foundation of me being not only a paranormal investigator, but doing what I do today. Because I was with my father. My mother had polio, so she was in the hospital in Chicago and an iron lung. My sister, my grandmother, and we were visiting my uncle who was at Fort Lee, Virginia. And this is a long story, but what was happening was the wind was coming in and going out. My father was the kind of person that when he drove into a big area like that, the first parking spot he would find, he would park and wouldn't move all day. He would stay right there. And we happened to be at an area that was called Reynolds Woods. And there was a big skirmish that happened on day one of the 3-day battle. And that involved Major General Reynolds of the Union troops, who happened, and they had all these Confederate soldiers were in the woods, and they were just hammering it out with him. And he was going back and forth on his horse, and his aide kept on telling him to get off the horse. You got to get down, General. you're gonna get hit. And he kept on going back and forth, and he ended up getting shot through the neck and killed.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was the highest officer of the whole entire battle that was killed. Now back to the noises. Every noise that you could put together of a battle, everything from the screaming of the people, the musket, the rifles, the pistols, the screams, the charges. You could hear the overhead grape shot go off. You could hear that going off. Cannon shots, horses screaming, everything I heard. And
Wow.
we got done, and back then they didn't have park rangers. They had like a police guy that went through. He stopped. My dad sort of waved at him. He stopped, and my dad went up, and I went over to hear what he was going to say. And he says, I'm just wondering. He says, we've been here for probably about 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and this continued to happen this whole entire time. And I was wondering what was happening. You know, is there something going on here? Like what today they do reenactments.
Right.
No, nothing. So he said, okay, thank you very much. Turned around and grabbed me by the nape of my neck. And he said to me, when we get home, you will not mention this to anybody. And I said, okay. And now I do because
Right.
he's long gone. But I, it's the same kind of thing. And I know that you must, when you do your writing, that you must get, you're all jacked up, aren't you? I mean, you're just jumping.
I mean, I never know what the chapter's going to do. I mean, I just sit down and it's like I'm a medium.
You're channeling.
I'm channeling it coming through. I mean, I do a lot of research initially, but when I sit down to write, I don't know what's going to happen. It just comes through.
It's wonderful.
It's
It's
pretty
amazing.
wild.
You know,
It's I love what I do. Really actually I just love it.
you've been given a great gift
Thank you, Greg.
to say the least. It's the kind of thing that that makes it important to go ahead and have somebody like you on at night, because there's people like you that need to have more exposure.
I appreciate that.
People need to know about all these different things and
What
creatures.
right. And you asked me what how you would do to reverse a tulpa.
Okay,
And that would be it really correlates with what we've learned about manifesting, just manifesting things that we want in our life. So the number one thing is when you don't want something in your life, what do? We take back our energy. And so that is basically, you got to realize this is a very deep, practice where people are very mindful. And I mean, they might spend 6 to 8 hours a day doing this in meditation, day after day after month. It's not like it's going to just pop and do it. And I think a lot of times when we want to manifest something, we think it's supposed to just, oh, well, we've been focusing on this for a week or two and it should be already happening, but it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it can. But so when we want to reverse, when they reverse the tulpa, like with Alexandria David Neal, so basically she goes pretty descriptive of how she takes back the energy that she was putting into it. Basically, that's what the bottom line is, taking back the energy and basically visualizing it to be disintegrating
so
and back
she
into the void.
so in other words, she would say, make a statement, like a blanket statement, that I'm now taking back all the energy that I put into such
Yeah.
and such.
Yes. And you know what's interesting is the one of the reasons why the Buddhists particularly do this, you're going to love it, is because it shows them that the world is not what we perceive it to be. That it's just like we can create our world and we can destroy our world in the mental capacity that goes into the physical capacity. And so their understanding of who we are as people, humans, is that we ourselves are tulpas. And so then you go down to the really into the rabbit hole where tulpas can create tulpas. So if you create a tulpa, like a monster, like in my book, because it starts with the previous book of the Frenzo Night Crawlers. So it's like the prelude of what brought us into the Tulpa book. And that is, so when we manifest these thoughts and they become in the physical reality, those monsters or tulpas can in turn create their own. It's kind of like an alien kind of thing, really, if you think about it. A lot of people don't realize it. It's where we put our energy into it. Just like the example that that your one of your in the chat where they were talking about the Philip experiment, or the Johanna experiment, or Pearl Bryan. Not the experiment, but that particular egregore. But a lot of times, people, wherever we're putting our energy into it. You know what I realized? When I really started thinking about the whole concept when I was writing, I don't know if you're familiar with American Gods, with Neil Gaiman's American Gods, but that is a really perfect example of how egregores are. Because like if you get into like the Hindu religion, they tell you what they're doing. They make a deity up and they present it to the people, and they'll give it a backstory. They'll tell you what kind of flowers to put on there and what things to say. They literally are creating that deity. And then you've got thousands and millions of people that are worshiping that deity. That is an egregore. It starts out as a tulpa when the person creates it, but when you got mass consciousness coming together, which brings you into religions, which I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but let's take Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, the man, and that was God and man, was a completely different being than what we have manifested into a white Jesus with blue eyes. That's an egregore, because so many people are worshiping that image of what Christ was. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the man that was God is not the same as what we are seeing today. It's two different things. Religion is a form of an egregore. Politics are a form of an egregore. So wherever our energy's going into, social media has turned into an egregore. I mean, it's a really fascinating thing, and it really is to be mindful of where our energy really is going. Like in a day, where does your energy go? Like, where are your thoughts going? So basically, in my Monster Hunter book, it's really cool how they end up combating these tulpas, because then I got myself kind of painting myself into a corner. Like, now what am I going to do? How am I going to, I got all these cryptids that are rising up across the nation, like in mass forms, and how am I going to get rid of them? But I can't tell you that, my little secret on that. You'll have to read it. Sure. But basically it really is about pulling back the energy. I actually went in to some of the philosophy of Grant Morrison, who I mentioned earlier. And he's really fascinating. He gets he's a ceremonial magician. He's a writer, a prolific writer, and he's Scottish. And he is into sigils. And so believe it or not, it all hooks into tulpas, the sigils. It's the subconscious. It's like when you write your name out, and then you
Right.
take all the vowels and you take all the double consonants out, and then you make a wheel and you put all the letters, the alphabets around it, and that's how you get your sigils. People might not know that's how they're created, but it is how they're created. So when we, let's just say we say we want to protect our home, and we see that and we put it on a refrigerator, consciously we're reading that. When we take all those vowels out and all those consonants and we turn it into a sigil, when we see that sigil, our subconscious is what's seeing that. And that's the part that creates. Our conscious mind does not create, it's our subconscious mind. So, like when you go into Bobby Mackey's and you think, oh well, there's a headless ghost running around here. Um, so many people have already seen it. You're consciously saying that, but subconsciously, that's what's seeing it. Which is interesting because then there was another author that was, and what is that original ghost hunter Hynek? No, it wasn't Hynek. Help me out, Greg. One of the
I think you're talking about Hans Holzer.
Yes, that his case actually he didn't realize it, and I can't think of what the guy's name was. Masterson, I think his last name was Masterson, and he was another author, and he was up on Gay Street in New York, and he was in Greenwich Village, and that was one of Holzer's first, not one of his first investigations, but he went in and did that. But you know what that actually ended up being? It was the Shadow Man. Do you know what book I'm talking about? The comics.
Yeah.
And then that was a tulpa. That didn't even show up until this Masterson moved out of that house, and then that's when they started seeing the Shadow Man, and it was the tulpa that he had created through a character. And they say that writers are masters at creating tulpas, whether they're, just think about it. A tulpa, when I sit down and I write, the next thing I know, I've got images. And if I'm really lucky, they're going to be on the TV. And the next thing you know, people are going to be wearing them. And then little kids are going to want to run around and be a monster hunter or a Spider-Man or Batman. That's a tulpa. But it turns into an egregore because it's on a collective consciousness. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Yes. So we are so powerful that we don't even know it. We have no idea as human beings how powerful we really are. And that's basically the theme of that particular book, is that we need to, I feel like people are really becoming more in tune to their own power. You know what I mean? But because I can remember years and years ago, just to think that you could manifest a house or manifest a car, but we're talking about manifesting something into reality that is coming from our mind. That's pretty phenomenal right there. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really something.
Yeah.
So you've been a real busy bee. I really take my hat off for you,
Well,
because
thank
it's
you,
like
Greg.
there's a lot of people that they'll go ahead and they'll put some thoughts together and they'll create a book, and then it'll go on the shelf, and then they go about their business. And you seem to have gone ahead and dedicated yourself to going ahead and really getting down to the nitty gritty on everything that you've really done on this. And there's people that have made comments. He says, one of them is Dean Thompson, and he says, or Christy says, words are manifestation.
Yes, they
And
are.
she's from Australia, and Dean says, I am legend, and then Hell House, and he has a question mark after it.
Hell House.
And he also said, everyone take a shot at everything you hear, Talpa. LOL, just kidding, wink, wink. Totally agree with the reverse energy. It goes way deeper than that, but spot on. All of us, deal with all this. And when we get together and we have this group on Mondays, like I had mentioned before the show, and it's people that it's a Psychics Unite group, and it's thoughts and where we are and what we're working on. And part of it lately has been going ahead and dealing not only with your energy, but uh, frequencies. Have you ever dived into frequencies?
Yes, I have. Actually, I listened to frequencies. Actually, I had my tuning fork out before I came on the show, which is a 432, which is
Okay.
our vibration that we not only we uh kind of generate to in our natural, being, but it's also the same frequency that ties us into the earth's frequency. Like, so when we go out and we're barefoot and we're grounding ourselves on the earth, that's a good way to get your frequency in tune with the earth and where your body should be at a 432. It's really fascinating when you get into frequencies. I actually had a friend just tell me a couple weeks ago that they just approved sound frequencies for healthcare on some health insurances,
Right.
for cancer, for heart problems, for just an array of different things, which I am super excited about. And I do believe that there's a lot of power in frequencies. I actually, many years ago, thought maybe that's even how the pyramids were built, through sound frequencies.
Yeah.
And levitation and stuff. And like I said, I'm so excited for humanity right now, because I really feel like so many of us are waking up to our own power. Um, and just like with the frequencies and stuff like that, which is interesting because in this particular book, and it started in a couple different books. I actually tied in stargates into that with the sigils, um, and that's part of the story. At the end of the story is the stargates, which a lot of people don't think stargates really exist, but NASA thinks they do, and there's 12 of them. The 10th stargate's over there in Iran.
Is it?
There's some of us that don't even think it's really about politics or war, is for a complete different reason. And I believe I am one of those that believe it's because if that Stargate is activated, the 10th Stargate, which is the representation of the voice, the throat chakra,
Yes.
people are getting their voice. They are speaking their truth. And if that particular Stargate activates, there's not going to be any stopping us as a humanity. We're going to really be able to know our truth, speak our truth, and guess what? Those kind of people can't be controlled. And I think that's one reason why they're over there, which has to do with frequencies. It ties all in together.
Do you own a generator?
No,
No. Have you ever had any interest in one that goes ahead and gives you the different frequencies?
no, I do. I just do. I didn't even know those existed. Like I said, I do have the tuning forks. I would love to get into the singing bowls. I actually had a couple different issues. Like if I have really bad headaches or something, there's different sound frequencies. They're easy enough to get into the on like YouTube. YouTube.
Okay.
But do you have a generator?
Yeah.
Do you?
Frequency. Let me pull it.
Well, that sounds cool. Well, you're just full of surprises, Greg.
Oh, want to keep you busy.
That's
You
good.
can never tell which way you're going to go with something like this. But
Right.
this
Especially
is
when I'm on.
this is the same. This is the same one that was on Facebook, and all these little dials on the bottom here, these little dots, are the different frequencies. And you set this up, and you can use headphones. You can buy a speaker for this.
Oh,
You
that's
can
really
use it
cool.
for sleeping. You can do it during the day, whatever you want to work on, and you have your choice because of all the different frequencies. I have them all written down somewhere here. And right now I don't know where I put it. But it's something that a few of us that are in the group on Mondays decided that it was worth going ahead and getting into, because we started, when you look at some of the things on Facebook that show when they start to talk about frequencies, they'll show one or two. And this is good for this is good for that. And then they had one that was like about 9 long. And it just took you right into the rabbit hole.
That's very cool.
And it was like, wow, this could be something that, you have to take the time. But
yeah, you do. Do you know that I found it fascinating that when I was closing the book out for the Tibet for the Tulpas, just take one guess which chakra there's actually one in Tibet, the 12th Stargate. Guess which chakra that's connected to. It really makes perfect sense.
The heart.
The
heart chakra.
Crown.
Okay.
Higher consciousness and higher understanding, which I think that they've got it going on there. You know what I mean?
Oh, they're fantastic people. I know. During the war, for a while, I was in Thailand, southern Thailand, and I lived in a hooch at the base of the mountain. And on top of the mountain was a Buddhist monastery. And that was the home of the reclining Buddha. And you could hear him chanting. And even the chanting does the same kind of thing to you.
Yes, it does.
It just resonates. And it
was just like humming. Humming will balance your heart out. Humming. That's why mothers hum to their children, babies, for years, millennia.
There's a whole bunch of people here now. Steve Hodgson, he's from down in Florida now. He used to be in Indiana. Christy's from Australia. Barbara's from Ohio.
She's right across the river from me.
So you're in Kentucky.
I'm in northern Kentucky. I can see Cincinnati outside my door.
Okay, so I used to go ahead and every year I would go to Cave Run Lake in Moorhead, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I was part of that professional circuit of muskie fishing. And in the springtime, we would go there every year. And that's where a lot of the extraterrestrial subject matter was brought up between the guys that were fishing. Because, they'd say, well, I'd say, well, you're from West Virginia, And then the other guy says, well, I'm from here. I'm from Kentucky. He says, and we go behind our house into the cave, and that's where we get the coal to heat our house.
Is Moorhead near? Isn't it a college town?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's only about an hour away, hour and a half away from me.
If you've never been to Cave Run,
Yeah, I've been to Cave Run. It's
okay.
yeah. So what's interesting when you were talking about the UFOs, um, I can't say who, but a couple of years ago there was something strange that everybody was seeing on Double A Highway, and actually a couple of my friends were saying, "Don't you know somebody that could go look into that?" And what it was it was this dog. It looked like a it was bigger than a German Shepherd kind of, but it was decapitated, and it was laying on the side of the road for a year and a half, Greg, without no decomposition, no bugs, no birds, no nothing. Nothing ate it for a year and a half. And one of my friends was a nurse, the other one was a hairdresser, and the other one was an architect. And her daughter and their son were all going up and down this double A highway. So I finally, for a year and a half. And my friend that was a nurse even talked to the doctor, in her office, and he's like, "It's just not possible." She called me. She said, "Isn't there somebody you can call?" So I called Jody Cook, who is in Cincinnati, who's the director and founder of North American Dogman Project. Well, guess what? It just so happens that not only was that particular thing on the side of the road for a year and a half, an hour and a half down further near Moorhead was the exact same thing for the exact same amount of time. And then it got back to me that there was intel saying that NASA had a telescope on that particular area, and that they usually do keep a telescope on that particular area because of all the UFO activity that happens down there. And then I also found out that that particular area in Kentucky is the area that most people go missing out of all of Kentucky is Moorhead. It's a really creepy area down there.
They talk about the roads all the time.
But guess what? When he went to go send two men out, this was like, I think I called him on a Friday. This was a Monday. Mysteriously, all the road was shut down, and that was no longer there. And neither was the one in Moorhead. They were both scooped up and done away with.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. That's a real story, too.
Well, we're going to have to go ahead and make a habit out of this if I have your approval.
Sure.
Every so often we'll get together.
Definitely, Greg.
It would be really great. And I want to thank you for everything tonight. And if there's anything, if you want to go ahead and let everybody know where they can get a hold of you, go right ahead.
Well, I'm on DAY Song. I'm on Amazon. I am, some of my books are at Joseph F. Barnes Nobles. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook too. I'm not really on X that much anymore. I just don't have the time, but you can actually follow me, and I actually promote a lot of my books and stuff that way. So I've got almost 60 books out. So
Wow.
so there's a couple series, and I'm getting ready to work on two books. Anthology of Madness, which is going to be a collection of short stories that's coming out in October, and my very first paranormal romance, Darkness Brewing, which will be coming out in December.
A romance.
Yes, paranormal romance. And then I have a friend that's also an author, John Vandevenner. He is the author of Relics, and he and I are collaborating on a book called Gin, and that'll be coming out probably in 2027, and that is going to be centered in Iran.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Who would figure? Huh?
And you know I'm going to throw them stargates in there, right?
Yeah. So thank you very much for being here, DA. And if you want to hang around for a few minutes, I'm
Okay.
going to go
Thanks,
ahead and shut
Gray.
it down, and then we'll talk for a few.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody.
Thanks,
That's been in
everybody.
the room. If you got any, is there any more before we close? Let's see. Is there anything else that's been brought up? Barbara Spears says, yes, DA, it would be wonderful to have you back for more discussion. Thank you for a great evening.
Thanks, Barbara. I appreciate you.
Christy says, soothing, heart.
Thanks, Christy.
Dean Thompson's a great guy. We've got a thing that we're going to tomorrow morning. So Starseed Paranormal, Nancy Kelly, Dean Rex. Okay, everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here. And we had a great guest tonight, and I couldn't ask for anyone better. So you guys all have a great evening, and we'll keep in touch. And we'll be see you next Wednesday for another episode of One Spirit Connect. And we'll talk to you then. Good night.
Good night.
Ha 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 ha.